After living in Sweden for just over a year and a half, I was starting to feel a bit homesick, so I decided it was time to go back. I went to the United States a couple months ago, came back in the middle of April. I had heard of reverse culture shock, but I wasn't sure if that was something I would actually experience because I've only been living in Sweden for about a year and a half. But I actually did experience a bit of culture shock. Apparently, I've gotten pretty used to things here in Sweden. The first thing is a word that came to my mind the very first day that I got back to Texas, and that was temporary. What I feel is in the United States, especially in Texas, things are built to be temporary. Even when I went to school, when they ran out of rooms for the children, they would build what was called portables. They were just temporary rooms, kind of like trailers, and they would just keep adding on. And you can see those all over the place in Texas. Buildings are built to be torn down within maybe 10 or 20 years. So it was kind of sad seeing a lot of buildings that they were new, and then I came back after just being gone for a year and a half, and already the paint was like bleached out. They weren't pretty looking. Buildings have just a basic, it's like a cinder block shell, and then on the front they'll have kind of like a fake facade. But here, that's contrasted with in Sweden and many places in Europe where buildings have been built to last. Some of the buildings are hundreds, if not even more than 1,000 years old, and they're very well cared for. But in America, it's not so. There's a lot of buildings that have been torn down several times in my lifetime, me just being on this earth for 4 decades. So that was something that really stood out to me, is it just felt like a lot of things were just temporary and just throw away. Another thing that really stood out to me was capitalism. So I'm not saying it's a bad or a good thing, but you definitely notice a huge difference. In Sweden, there are some advertisements, but not to the extent that you see in America. Everywhere you go, even advertisements for medications, it seems like they have an advertisement for every single possible symptom you could possibly imagine on the television, and you don't really see that in Sweden. There are billboards everywhere. There are flashing TVs everywhere advertising some soft drink or some beer or some other type of thing for you to buy. It's not just actual material things, but it's also the way people deal with each other. So capitalism affects you as an individual to where you basically also have to sell yourself. So there is a very big difference in the personalities of people in Sweden versus in America. So in America, whereas people judge you by the car that you drive and the type of house that you have and the neighborhood that you live in, and you have to talk about your education and your titles and your, as they call it, alphabet soup, or all the letters that come after your name for all your credentials that you have. In Sweden, it's the other way around. People don't like it when you brag, and they kind of expect that even if you're a doctor or a dentist or have a lot of education, you still can be called by your first name. That was something that kind of took a little getting used for me coming here in Sweden in the beginning, like calling my teacher by his first name. That was really strange to me. I come especially from the south of the United States, so we use a lot of titles like sir and ma'am, Mr., Miss, doctor, and it's expected that you do that. So that was kind of strange for me, going back to the United States and basically having to kind of relearn how I did things when I was living there. Some of the other things about people kind of selling themselves was like, people talk about the work they do, the jobs they do, the little projects that they've been working on. Whereas in Sweden, I feel like it's more kind of not such heavy conversation. It may be topics about the weather or nature or a vacation that they just came back, or how their children are doing. So it's a little bit more kind of softer topics. Another word that comes to mind is big. So not everything is bigger in America, but there are a lot of things that are bigger. Of course, a lot of portions are bigger of the food. That doesn't necessarily mean better quality, but usually you get bigger portions, you get free refills, it's served in larger cups. So if you want soda, watch out, diabetes. Then it's also us. I know I was bigger when I lived in the United States because of all the larger portions and a certain lifestyle there. And I think there's, and I'm not judging a person for being a bigger person, but there are a lot of people that I think in America want to be healthy. They want to have a better lifestyle. You can tell because a lot of people do sign up for gym memberships, and they get personal trainers, and they sign up for these weight loss diet programs. But when I compare the overall size of people in Sweden versus the size in America, you can see that it's a little bit more difficult to stick to a more healthier lifestyle that would allow you to have a healthier size of a body. Also, the vehicles are bigger. So a lot of people drive trucks where I come from, giant pickup trucks. You're starting to see that more here in Sweden as well. There's even some American brands that are making the waves over here. I've been seeing some Dodge, I've been seeing some Chevys and some Fords over here, but it's not to the extent that it is in the United States. The roads are bigger in the United States as well. You have nice big wide lanes, you've got big shoulders, whereas in Sweden there's a lot of even one-lane roads, but it's for two-way traffic, and so you kind of have to play chicken and see who's going to move over to the side and then let the other person pass. So that was kind of a big shock to me, because I was driving when I went back to the United States, and there is a different way to drive on the roads there compared to here in Sweden. So I kind of touched on this a little while ago. It was health issues. It was kind of sad going back to the United States and finding out that a lot of people that were people I'd grown up around, they were, most of them, of course, older than me, like my parents' age or my grandparents' age, and seeing that a lot of them passed away of a lot of diseases that they do exist to some extent here in Sweden, but not such a large extent as in America. I've been taking care of a lot of patients. I work in healthcare, and I've got a lot of patients that are in their 90s or even over 100 years old. And that's not quite so common in the United States. A lot of people I know have passed away in their 50s and 60s of chronic diseases, usually related to the typical lifestyle in America. And so that was kind of sad. And I think the COVID situation in the United States just kind of exacerbated that. So there were quite a few people in my life that they ended up passing in the last couple years. So that was kind of sad. Another big thing was it's not pedestrian friendly in the States. I sold my vehicle, and because of that, I decided, well, I'm just going to go walk to the store and buy some stuff, some food items, and then walk back to the house. It was not an easy feat. It was quite a long walk. The cities are not built very livable to where you can just walk a short distance to a store, and there are almost no sidewalks. Usually you'll be on the sidewalk and you'll just terminate somewhere, and then you've got to get out in traffic, and then there's no shoulder to walk on, and that you risk getting hit by a car. So it's quite dangerous. So that was another big shock for me. Another thing is the voices. So people do tend to usually talk louder in the United States, and I'm used to, you get on the bus or the train and you try to keep your voice down or not even talk at all. Try to make sure you're wearing headphones so that you're not disturbing your neighbor, whereas in the United States it was a little bit louder. Now, when I say reverse culture shock, it's not always all negative stuff. There are a lot of positives. So for me, it was kind of refreshing to go back to the States and you can just kind of talk to anyone. People don't get scared when you start talking to them, because in Sweden people are very private and they are very quiet, and they will bend over backwards to help you and give the shirt off their back if you say that you need help. But a lot of people aren't used to that, talking to just strangers, and so they can startle easy. I know I when I came back from the United States, I noticed I was laughing a little louder and talking a little louder, and it kind of startled a few people, and so I kind of had to bring it down a few decibels. But yeah, that's quite a huge difference for me, and I don't think it's necessarily all bad. I think it's just different. Going back to health situation, so when I came to Sweden on vacations in the past before I decided to move here, I noticed that my health was always better. The air is cleaner, the water is cleaner, the food is cleaner, and so I have a lot of health issues that would improve when I was here, and so that was one of the few reasons that I decided to move here. Now, going back to the United States, within 24 hours, I have a history of chronic eczema, and the eczema has pretty much, for the most part, completely disappeared living here in Sweden. But within 24 hours, my skin was itching so bad, I had to go and buy some medication, and I broke out with like rashes everywhere, just from, I think, from the water. Because as soon as I came back to Sweden, within 24 hours, the rashes started disappearing, and within a week, they were completely gone. So that was crazy. I noticed I was a lot more bloated too, eating a lot of the food. I started having a lot of stomach troubles. The food tasted fantastic, but they do use a lot of chemicals, a lot of preservatives in the food that they don't typically use here. And just the general landscape, it was kind of a shock. You know, I live close to the water. We have a lot of nature. We have a lot of parks here in Sweden. And that's pretty typical. Just about anywhere you go, you can find some nice nature paths to go and walk, even if you're more inland, away from the ocean. There's lakes all over the place. So going back to Texas, if you're going to go see something nice like that, I actually went out to my grandparents' area where they had lived my entire childhood until they passed away in my teenage years. So I made a journey out there to an area called Whitney, Texas, and there is like a state park out there. But it took a couple hours to get out there. I was feeling a little bit nostalgic, and so I wanted to go see the house that they lived in, and I was in for a shock because it was so deteriorated and so run down. And I have been in a third world country before. I've been to Vietnam, I've been to Lebanon, I've been to over 20 countries. So I've seen some pretty bad living conditions before. And going there, I was shocked with what I saw. I'm like, this is United States, this is Texas, in that neighborhood that I remember going and spending summers at by the lake. You know, it was like all these beautiful trees and everything. People were like just burning stuff out in the front yards. The houses looked like the roofs were gonna collapse. And of course, I didn't want to record any of that and put that here on YouTube. I kind of want to preserve everybody's dignity. But you can imagine, it looked like a third world country, and I just felt so bad for, and just depressed, really, seeing all that. So that was quite a bit of a shock to me, because, you know, you go out in the countryside here in Sweden and you just don't see stuff like that. That's not typical. So it wasn't all bad going back home, but within just a few days, of course, I enjoyed seeing my family, I enjoyed seeing my friends, and it was so nice getting some really good food. But I was ready to come back to Sweden, and as soon as I got back here, I felt like I could relax. I just felt like I just had all this like stress built up and everything. So it was really good coming back here to Sweden. So it seems like this is my home now. And of course, I will always be a citizen of two worlds. I have my roots in the States, and there's a lot of good things there. There are things that I will always miss. And I definitely, of course, I'm going to be going back and forth, seeing my family and my friends and that sort of thing. So anyway, those were just some of my thoughts. I'd love to know, did you ever have any reverse culture shock going back to maybe your homeland? Maybe you didn't live in Sweden, maybe you moved to another country, and then going back to your own homeland, maybe you felt a little bit of a reverse culture shock. And was it positive? Was it negative? Love to see what you have to say in the comments section. And especially those of you that maybe are from the States that have moved to Sweden, Scandinavia, Europe, wherever. I'd love to see what you have to say. So don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want to leave a comment, I am pretty good about getting back to your comments. So thank you guys so much for your support, and you'll have a wonderful day.